Hello, everybody. I'm Professor Bonaparte, and we have a guest speaker today, Scott Dykstra from JPMorgan and President of Rocky Mountain AFP. Scott, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joseph, for having me today. It's a pleasure to be with you all. As Joseph mentioned, I'm Scott Dykstra, Vice President at JPMorgan. I'm based here in Denver, Colorado. I'm a Vice President on the National Professional Services Coverage Banking team. And really excited to talk to you about my career and to talk to you about finance and banking today. As Joseph mentioned, I serve on the executive committee for Rocky Mountain AFP, which is a finance and treasury-oriented group here in Denver, Colorado. And also I serve on the Finance Advisory Council for CU Denver.
Scott, let's go with the Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I am working on my professional MBA right now in a specialization in risk management and insurance. I currently work in risk management for a luxury travel company. So I'm just trying to kind of expand and learn more about the finance realm because that is not in my background at all.
You, Giancarlo.
Hi, my name is John Carlo. I was a student of Joseph for 2 semesters now. Majoring in finance. I was in the Navy for 11 years on submarines, and I just wanted a change of pace, a change of career path, and I was interested in finance. So I was really excited when I saw this opportunity come up just to dip my toes in and listen to what you had to provide. And so, yeah, thank you.
Julio, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. First, thank you very much, Professor, for setting this up, and thank you very much, Scott, for your time. As Professor said, my name is Julio Villegas. I'm from San Jose, Costa Rica. I'm doing my 1-year MBA. We don't have a focus on our 1-year MBA, but we work a lot in consulting. I have an undergrad in finance and have worked at a Big Four, at Moody's, and then at a very fast-paced large startup doing FP&A. And now, we're wrapping up our masters, and I'm trying to figure out if there's opportunities for me out here. So it's good to learn from banking. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Julio, and thanks everybody. We're gonna have 5 questions, and after that, we're gonna open it to students to ask. The first question to Scott about career path and advice. Can you tell us about your career journey and how you reached your current position as a vice president of JPMorgan? What advice would you give to students who aspire to work in the finance industry?
Yeah, there's a lot that I can talk about here, Joseph, and I heard Caitlin talk about her background in risk management, and I myself am an undergrad major in risk management and insurance. So all that to say that, risk management has provided a foundation for my career as I've gone into banking and finance. So I started out after obtaining my undergrad degree at International Paper in their global treasury unit. And I spent 4 years there doing a mix of duties, but mostly focusing in on corporate insurance and global risk management, and working with global operations around the world. And I also performed cash management duties as part of that, which really helped my idea of finance and treasury, and how that works within a global business, a global Fortune 250 business like International Paper. And so, with that background, I decided that I really wanted to go back to business school, and further provide for my finance and treasury skills by going back and getting my full-time MBA. So I applaud each one of you here today, because I was on a similar path at one time myself. And with that, I was looking at finance and banking opportunities, and an opportunity for me came about with Citibank. And I joined their management associate program right out of MBA. It was a 2-year program based in New York City. And then through that program, I really got to learn banking. Prior to that, my banking expertise and experience was limited to wires, ACHs, and everything that was needed to run a global business. But I really got to learn the infrastructure and how a bank operates at a large level as a global enterprise itself through that experience at Citi. And so I worked in the strategy department at Citi. I worked in credit underwriting. I was on tech, media, and telecom in credit underwriting. And then in 2019, I was asked to move out here to Denver, Colorado. And that was for an expansion office opportunity here in Denver for Citi's middle market. And I learned a lot through that experience. And 2 years ago, I was asked to join JPMorgan as part of their middle market banking opportunity here. And I've been with JPMorgan ever since, and most recently transitioned to their national professional services coverage team, which has allowed me the opportunity to cover clients in the accounting, consulting, engineering, architecture, and law space. And so, the second part of that question, Joseph, about, what I can provide as advice to the students today and the students that are going to be listening. For me, I think it's a willingness to learn, a willingness to be curious. The fundamentals of finance have always been there, but our world is changing so rapidly, and we're going to touch on that later in this conversation, that it's really important to be curious and asking questions about the fundamental underworkings of products and solutions, and why they might be a good fit for one customer and maybe not so for another customer. And so, I'd encourage you to, also work on soft skills in addition to the hard skills that you're learning in your MBA classes, and make sure that you're an individual that is well-rounded, and very, very curious in the way that banking and finance works, but also the broader macroeconomy around you. Because you're going to be dealing with all different types of industries, and each one of those industries has its own unique characteristics. So, really, really be curious about what's going on around you.
Thank you so much, Scott. I like the curious and the critical thinking. We talk about it in the class, a lot of critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The second question is about networking and professional development. How important, Scott, this is really important, students understand that. How important is networking in the finance industry? And what strategies would you recommend for students to effectively build their professional network?
Yeah, I mean, this is really an important part of getting your MBA, is building out your networking and building out the people that are going to surround you for the rest of your career. And that really was a game changer for me as I entered into banking and finance. Previously, when I was a treasury practitioner, there really wasn't as much emphasis on taking coffee chats and going out to lunch with colleagues. And what I learned as I was going through the interviewing process for Citi was that it's really important to build up your network in the interview process, but also even after you get the job, it's so important for people to know who you are and to know what your brand is throughout the bank. And it becomes especially important at larger organizations, to have that skill set and to be able to speak to senior leaders, to be able to speak to analysts, and to speak to summer interns, and to really establish your networking base. And it could be done through Zoom meetings. It could be done through in-person meetings, phone calls. I know a lot of us are probably dealing with Zoom fatigue at this point. But I would really encourage you to take whatever means necessary to really establish your base, establish your networking. And one of the things that I learned while I was in business school was the importance of LinkedIn, and using that as a tool to really develop and build out your connections and build out your network. And it's something that I still use to this day when I'm looking at companies, doing research, doing prospecting, and building out my network here in the Metro Denver area. It's been an incredible tool for me, and one that I frequently tell others to use more. So I would encourage all the students here to continue to use LinkedIn, continue to build their brands, and continue to meet with folks in their interested industry, whether it's banking, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing. It doesn't matter. Just continue to meet more folks and learn about new parts to those jobs in those various industries.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Scott. We're going to talk about industry trend. What are the current trends and challenges in the finance industry that young professionals should be aware of? How is JPMorgan now, we're going to focus on JPMorgan, positioning itself to address these trends and challenges?
Yeah. I mean, banking and finance is just being completely revolutionized right now. And I know that Joseph is on the forefront of that, as he's talking about fintech, as he's talking about AI and machine learning. And for me, when I was thinking through this, I think there were three things that really crystallized to the forefront for me. And the first of which is digitalization. It really has become apparent in the past 10, 20 years that consumers and corporate clients really are clamoring for technology that helps their lives become more efficient, helps their day-to-day work life become more efficient. And with that, JPMorgan has been providing treasury technology to practitioners in the form of Chase Connect and JPMorgan Access, our FX platforms, our Morgan Markets platform. So we work on a daily basis with our technology developers in order to meet the needs of our consumers. And the technology platforms that I just mentioned don't even touch the scope of retail banking, which in and of itself has its own digital apps, our Chase app that consumers use. And so every experience that someone is having with the banking system and with the infrastructure, has been changed from having an in-person interaction at a retail branch on your street corner. And so I think it's been really interesting to see that revolution in non-banks and fintechs are really playing an important part in that. And it'll be interesting to see how this continues to progress as banks continue to compete in this space, where, there's partnerships and where, these other non-banks are looking to upend the traditional model. Instant payments is another part of that. And that's very specific to Treasury, but it's something that corporate clients and retail consumers alike are going to benefit from as they continue to roll instant payments out throughout the globe. And you might have already seen that on some of your banking apps, that you can instantaneously send money to another entity or another person throughout the globe. So digitalization is really something that's at the forefront of banking and banking trends right now. Another one that comes to mind, and it's very personal for me, given my trajectory in banking, is specialization within banking. And what I mean by that is what we've seen is consumers and corporates are really looking for differentiating factors of Bank A versus Bank B. Banking has become more of a commodity in that there are so many different firms out there that are providing for deposits, for savings accounts, for loans, and what these banks are doing to differentiate themselves has really become an important part of the value proposition in banking and finance in general. And what we're seeing from industry market research is that clients are really focused in on what thought leadership bankers can provide to their clients. And so it's not just a matter of opening up accounts and providing for credit facilities anymore. It's a client that wants to know how they can be best in class themselves and how we can use the data analytics from our different industry specializations to help them become the best that they can be. And I mentioned that I'm in professional services right now and covering clients in accounting and law and consulting and architecture and engineering. And all these different clients across the United States are looking for ways to be best in class and to know more about what's going on in each one of their individual industries. And there are different players that are more prevalent in different industries than others, namely private equity and private credit. Direct lending is becoming a force within the banking industry. So all these things are playing, to the advantage of the corporate clients that we serve and really are helping the banks become even better versions of themselves. So specialization, industry specialization is definitely something that we're seeing. And then at a more macro level, I'd say interest rates and inflation are definitely a huge part of the overall banking environment right now. We're having more conversations than ever with clients about liquidity and about what they can do with excess and strategic cash reserves than we ever did before. In the years leading up to the rising interest rates that we've seen recently, more of the conversation was structured around credit and structured around loans at very low interest rates. And now that conversation has completely been upended to how practitioners can save and how they can earn more interest on their deposits at a bank like JPMorgan. And so, it's really been interesting, and we'll have to see how central banks react here in the second half of the year. But that's really been a strong macroeconomic trend that's affected banking and finance in a big way in terms of the products and solutions that are available to consumers and clients.
Thank you so much. We touch in this a lot, but there is another question if you want to add another thing, how is technology such as fintech and AI impacting the traditional banking sector? I know we touched a lot on that. Can you share any specific innovation, JPMorgan, that are changing the way you do the business? I think we touched most of that. If you want to add anything.
Yeah, and there's just so much going on right now within the banking industry and specifically at JPMorgan. Within Jamie Dimon's letter to shareholders, I would strongly encourage you to read that. It's a really interesting look at where Jamie thinks technology and AI is going. And, as a firm, we're really proud of our investment within the technology space. We've spent over $11 billion in investment in technology, and hired over 2,000 data scientists to help build out our expertise within AI and machine learning. And, it's really been interesting to see this continue to evolve as I've been in the banking industry. And earlier in our conversation, I was talking about treasury technology platforms and how that's really made a difference for our corporate clients. There are other tools out there that have really helped out a lot for our corporate clients. Enterprise resource planning, ERP software integration, and host-to-host connectivity. Both of those have really been game changers for global corporate clients as they're continuing to build out their resources throughout the globe. And you see these decentralized treasury centers in Europe and Asia. It's really important that we meet clients where they are and continue to provide them with the best-in-class technology that we can provide. And I think what we're going to continue to see here going forward is a real emphasis on fighting fraud within this space, because I think as we continue to understand the risks associated with AI and machine learning, there's a lot of emphasis on what bad actors can do in this space. JPMorgan, among other banks, is committed to fighting fraud within the banking system. And so that's also going to be a very real priority for the bank going forward, in addition to what consumers and corporates have already been seeing, with chatbots, as you're opening up websites and leading you to different areas of bank expertise on their website. So it's going to be really interesting going forward. I'm really excited for it. And, there's a lot of capabilities out there. And I would encourage everyone to stay tuned, as we're continuing to move forward in this new era for banking. Like I said, it's not going into your retail branch and withdrawing and depositing money anymore. It's really become a multifaceted system of technology that's really helping consumers and clients alike.
You suggest, I'm sorry, it's a follow-up, that
Sure.
we're going to see less branches for banks in general, not only JPMorgan?
So JPMorgan is really committed to our branch network. So I think what you're going to see is branches augmented with technology. And so, with that, you're going to see the folks that are helping you out with private client interactions, whether it's your mortgage, whether it's a car note, whether it's a high yield savings account. But you're also going to see the possibility for a technological innovation within that branch, and something that helps to capture the experience that you're having on your app with with JPMorgan Chase overall. And so I think all of that is going to combine together into the customer experience. But you know, JPMorgan is really proud that we have a physical presence in all the states in the United States, and you know, it's really a point of pride. So I think branches are going to be a primary component of that, but technology is going to augment it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Scott. The last question is about ethics and responsibility. Given the significant role that financial institutions play in the global economy, how does JPMorgan ensure it uploads ethical standards and corporate social responsibility? What role do you see for the new professionals in maintaining these values?
Yeah. Ethics and responsibility are always going to be the core tenets of banking relationships. You know, I remember when I was at Citi and I was attending credit college, we had our head of credit risk at the time came in, and he wanted to know what we thought banks sold. And the point that he was making to us was that banks are in the business of selling risk on their balance sheets. And so, you know, as part of that, it's so important for the employees at JPMorgan and at any bank to uphold ethical standards and corporate social responsibility, and to be able to uphold those values in every customer relationship that we have. You know, one of the most important things in the banking relationship is the trust, and you know, building the relationship with the customer. And you know, that plays out through the know your customer, the KYC, and the anti-money laundering standards that banks are working within those infrastructures. But most importantly, at JPMorgan, we have 20 principles that we uphold in what we call how we do business. And each one of us has a card that we have. And I was actually looking through my wallet, and sure enough, I did find it here. And you know, what it says on the back of it is, we are devoted to building the best and most respected financial services company in the world, serving our clients and growing our communities globally. And none of that is possible without having ethics and corporate social responsibility as the foundation to it. And it really just boils down to, you know, doing the right thing and doing it when no one's watching. And you know, that's something that really was instilled in me at business school, and you know, something that you know, continues with me as I'm here at JPMorgan. So I would encourage everyone here today to, you know, continue to uphold those ethics and corporate social responsibility as a core tenet in the foundation of building out your careers. You know, it's so incredibly important. You know, I'm a licensed banker, FINRA licensed banker, and you know, without the ethics and the corporate social responsibility, you know, the relationship, it really doesn't have a sturdy foundation. And so, you know, it really is an important part of who we are and how we operate.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate so much your time. The first part of the speaker is already covered. We asked 5 questions, and thank you, Scott, for great answers. Now we're gonna open it to students to ask a question if they have. But before we have a new student, Jack. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, good morning. Sorry I'm late. I got caught up at work.
No worries.
I was trying to get on
No.
sooner.
Of course. Business
Nice
first.
to meet you.
Yeah.
Yes, nice meeting you too. Thank you for speaking, taking the time.
Yeah, Jack, you want to introduce yourself? to
Yeah.
what do you do? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jake Hollenbach, a recent student of Joseph's. I'm an MBA student. I work for Rush Enterprises. We're the only publicly traded heavy-duty truck dealership in the country. There's about 180 stores nationwide. I've been with the company now 13 years. Definitely interested more on the financial side. I'm currently on the operations side. I'm learning more about finance. I've been listening to economic podcasts more frequently now. So definitely interested in the whole field. ESG is a big proponent of that. What's moving forward, what's moving the needle as far as markets nowadays. So yeah, I find it all very interesting, and I'm trying to learn more, get my foot in the door, if you will, and try to see where I can take the next chapter of my career.
Thank you so much, Jake. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Students, now your time. If you have a question to Scott, ask him anything. Please go ahead.
If you don't mind me going first, again, thank you, Scott, for your answers.
And you
It
can
was
ask
good
more than a question also.
to learn a little bit about how JPMorgan is doing things on the inside. I've always wondered, how do you guys, since you guys were talking about risk quite a bit, how do you guys manage the real risks of working within your organization? And what I mean by this is, you work in a very specific line of services within the bank, and there are other specific lines around, and sometimes, the interaction between them due to regulations and compliance is very complex. But you do want to sell cross services to your clients. So from your perspective, what's the key to managing and successfully implementing, cross-functional teams in an industry like banking?
Yeah, it's such a great question. As you think about banks and global banking, there's so many different facets to it. And I think what you're alluding to is, there's corporate banking, commercial banking, but outside of that, there's a whole other world of banking within the firm, within JPMorgan. And I work closely with our investment banking teams. I work closely with our private banking teams. Within that, we're aligned with the one common goal of providing a first-class client experience for these corporations and for the individuals that are working at the corporations. We want to make sure that they think highly of JPMorgan, that they want to bank with us at the corporate level, at the individual level. And so, here at the local market level, I know my colleagues on the private banking side. I know our colleagues that are in the investment banking space. And when we have opportunities to introduce our clients to those folks, we take those opportunities and make sure that they know about the depth and breadth of JPMorgan and what we can provide to them. And I think the other part of your question was also around risk and controls as it relates to that. And so, there's within the banking sector, there's private side and public side facing employees. For instance, I'm part of the private side. As I'm helping out clients and companies, my colleagues on the private banking side are public facing. And so, we go through training and to make sure that we understand, where there might be conflicts and how to manage those conflicts as we're, continuing to share information with our colleagues throughout the firm. And so we do so with diligence and with risk management in mind. But all that to say that, we want to make sure that our customers and clients are at the forefront, and their needs are at the forefront of every conversation. And so we want to bring the whole experience of JPMorgan to them, in any way possible. And so, doing that, requires partnerships and resources throughout the bank. And that's really what makes JPMorgan special in that sense.
You?
Thank you very much.
Other question?
Yeah, I have quite a few questions actually, but I'll just do a few right now.
Yeah, let's take one.
Forgive my ignorance. I'm not in the graduate program. I'm just working on my bachelor's right now. One of them is, as far as you kind of covered it, is the wide spectrum of jobs available. And when I'm looking at jobs to apply for, I'm kind of overwhelmed with where to go. Like I'm looking at investment banking, equities, wholesale credit, compliance, quantitative research. And so one of the questions was, is there a specific job you just start with and then those kind of branch out from there? Or do you really have to be proactive and only applying for kind of the career path you want? And on top of that, my other one was, my wife and I want to be expats, and I saw that JPMorgan had had a presence in Portugal and in France. And I was wondering if you had any information on that or any connections or networking opportunities to maybe make that dream of mine come true. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to hear about your background, Giancarlo, and really appreciate the question here. So to your first question, regarding, how do you break in, so to speak, into banking and finance? My experience is probably, I guess, the more generalized experience. I went through the graduate recruitment process, and was able to rotate throughout Citibank, and experience strategy, experience credit underwriting, and then I transformed into the relationship manager banker role after that. I think what a lot of folks will tell you, if you're looking at corporate commercial banking, is that credit is really where you build your underwriting and your foundation. And so if that's something that's interesting to you, if you're looking towards the path of corporate commercial banking, I would encourage you to build out your foundation of credit underwriting, because it really helps that critical analysis piece that we talked about earlier, and really helps you focus in on what makes companies work. I've been able to bank a number of different firms, and it's really interesting. You can look at financial statements and look at the story that a firm is trying to tell. But if you pick up a phone and start talking to the person, sometimes they don't reconcile together. And that's where it's really important to have these critical analysis skills, and to be able to question and dig for the diligence that leads to the judgments and the proposals that ultimately come about as a part of that. So all that to say that, if your interests are, outside of the commercial and corporate banking realm, there are plenty of opportunities in that space as well. And banks need literally every single type of MBA graduate out there, whether it's ops, whether it's marketing, and anything that you can think of, banks are really in need of it. So I would encourage you to not necessarily limit yourself to one set of opportunities, but continue to network, continue to build out your contacts within the industry, and really learn what's interesting to you. And so the second part of your conversation, your question for me around global mobility is a really interesting one. And I think that was something that really appealed to me when I started out at Citi, having the capabilities internationally, and then moving over to JPMorgan, I knew that I wanted to work at an international bank, and one that had capabilities and locations worldwide. All that to say that global mobility is an important part of the DNA of JPMorgan, and I think that's only going to continue going into the future. I myself don't have contacts in those countries that you mentioned, Portugal and France. But I think what you do as you come into a firm is you learn and establish yourself, establish your brand, and seek out those folks that can help make that dream a reality for you, and continue to build out those networks abroad, and trust me, they'll come in at the at times when you won't expect it. I've worked with folks in Europe on deals that were centered here in the United States, because we were looking for subject matter expertise, and it laid outside of the US. And so, it's really incumbent upon you, as you're going through your career, to take advantage of those opportunities, and stop and pause and say, hey, I really want to learn more about like your career path and like how you landed in this position. Can you tell me more about that? Is there someone else that you can lead me to? So you really have to be your best advocate in order to land in those locations that you want. All that to say, JPMorgan definitely encourages mobility, and we're definitely an international firm and advertiser ourselves as such.
Thank you so much, Scott. We reach our time. I appreciate everybody showing up and coming to this podcast, or a guest speaker. And I will share Scott's contact with LinkedIn. Is that okay, Scott?
Of course.
With the students. Yep. And you can reach out to Scott via LinkedIn and talk to him if you want. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Professor.
I do have one question. Do you mind if I reach out to you later after this?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah. I appreciate it. No, thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jake.
everybody.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.